The PS2 is home to quite a lot of experimental games. It's why there's so many games on the system, because during this time, devs really felt like they could get out of their comfort zone and try new ideas. It's why we have games like Mr. Mosquito, Katamari Damacy, and Tulip. If you somehow know what Tulip is, then congratulations, because I didn't even know what this game was until 2 days ago, so that's why I'm including it. You could search for hours and find some game that has little to no info on it on the PS2, and I think that's why I love this system so much. But I will say, we're covering a weird game today that is still pretty known by the community for one thing and one thing only. A game made by Treasure back in 2001, known as Stretch Panic. Hearing this bombastic music for the intro really gets me excited and pumped to play. It gives off that wonder of diving into a new world. Oh boy, I can't wait! Oh, I'm in danger. Stretch Panic is a game. Thank you. I know it's a lot of hard work to come to this realization, but I'm here to do that hard work for you guys. Thank you. A game made by Treasure. They made hits such as Mischief Makers, the Bleach DS games that I really loved as a kid, and then that one game that everyone always asks me what the name of is on my Planet Dot video. And if you're wondering, it's Rakugaki Showtime for those who want to know. And I do plan to talk about it someday, so don't worry. I'll eventually talk about this game. These guys are known to make a lot of interesting games in their lifetime, and from what I've gathered, are pretty well respected in the gaming community. They haven't made a new game since 2014, but did announce a remake or something to a beloved franchise of theirs, but we still have no idea what franchise. More than likely, it's probably one of their shoot-'em-up games that they made, but hopefully it's like a Mischief Makers remaster or something. That'd be so cool. Stretch Panic is their attempt at making a fun, cutesy 3D game involving the whole mechanic of stretching models with your demon scarf hand. Anything that exists in this game can be grabbed and pulled on, but this mechanic did make the game take a major hit in the graphics department. It's why the models are very low poly and lack a good amount of detail, as a highly detailed model would have made it hard to stretch it and bend it. And while I do like the look of the game, I can't deny that a good amount of stuff in the game is just ugly. Like, compare the main character of the game to our 2D art, and you can see how much of the original vision was kind of lost. From what I could see, Treasure really had high hopes for this game with the amount of advertising put into this game, with these magazine promos, and also the game is called Hippo Linda in Japan and Freak Out in PAL regions if you're wondering, and the box arts are very different, with the American having this more purplish tone to everything, while the Japanese version takes a bright yellow approach. Then you have the PAL artwork taking a whole different approach with just having her in the main hub area, while the French version is just red. There was also a whole demo disc release that has probably some of my favorite artwork for the game, having her just chilling in the room, while the back has a bunch of enemies from the game. There's not much to the demo besides the fact the Japanese version has 2 exclusive enemies, which are these head guys and these round boys. Apparently the Japanese version came out way later and had more quality of life improvements, like adding the extra enemies to make things more interesting, and some attacks not taking so many points to use. But beside these little things, the game seemed to be pretty identical for the most part. But now we can finally dive into the actual game and talk about it. This game is about an unusual story of an unusual little girl. We have these comic book style cutscenes of our main protag walking home with a bunch of gifts till a truck comes speeding down, knocking her over. We see the truck has a weird symbol on it that the game makes sure you notice. Then we cut to the truck pulling up to a house and dropping off a gift. This house ends up being the home of our protag and her sisters. The box being random as hell coming here and having this weird demon with a heart on it, and somehow the sisters still chose to open it. 100% that's on you guys for being that stupid. Once they open the box, a door appears to then suck everything into the world inside. Our protag ends up getting sucked into it as well when she arrives home, and while this ends up happening to her, her scarf she wears turns into a demon hand with a giant eye in the middle. This is how she gets her stretchy powers. Now, those who kept up with my videos know I talked about this game before in my aesthetics video, and my opinion is still the same. Which I think now this is like the 3rd or 4th game I've covered in that I'm now doing a full review on, so I think it's pretty cool how I'm just kind of coming full circle with a lot of those games that I did like in that video, and finally getting to really experience the whole game. This little hub area that you first hop into is such a drastic change in tone from the title screen. Like, I really like how this game sets up this exciting tone of everything just to be thrown into literally hell. This is such a great first impression, giving a sense of curiosity of what and where this place even is, followed by a sense of dread and isolation as only you and these random doors are here. So Stretch Panic, while it does have levels per se, you're mostly going to be fighting bosses, as this game is basically a glorified boss rush. The only reason these other stages exist are to gain points that are used to open doors to the boss rooms. Now these areas are basically like little levels that you can explore, and they also have the most recognizable enemy in the game. So if you've ever seen any YouTuber talk about this game, this is the thing everyone brings up, and yeah, I see why. They also help them fly like a helicopter if you're wondering, so they do be spinning. So when you gain enough points, you're able to fight the bosses by grabbing on the doors and pulling them, and these are quite unique fights for sure. They all have their own unique boss room, and these cutscenes will play every time, showing the sister floating in the air, surrounded by these demons playing instruments. They spin around your sister till they turn into a ferocious demon. The fights, while simple, can get creative, going from fighting giant robots to helping space cops take out an intruder. Each boss even has special ways of damaging them for extra points. You can see the health of your boss by this star, as the amount of damage you do is shown as percentages, and this is why some health stars can have different colors. Treasure, I feel, did an amazing job bringing these bosses to life with their designs. All the designs here feel like they're from a dream for sure, fitting this game's aesthetic very well. Can we also just talk about the cute hat our pro tag wears? She wears this red hat with a huge grin seen from the back at all times, with her buttons on the hat making it look like it has eyes. It's a weird outfit choice for sure, but I do really like it. I personally would have loved owning this hat for sure when I was younger, but good luck finding anything Stretch Panic merchandise, even fan-made merchandise. Now I want to talk about some bosses here that I really liked and which ones I didn't. I enjoyed this one where you have to pull these creatures out from the middle of the boss arena so the floor below can bite the boss, giving you an opening. While she herself doesn't do too much for attacking, it's a nice test of your reaction time and skill with controlling the hand. The robot one that I mentioned earlier is another favorite of mine, as I'm just a sucker for robots, and seeing that a demon is actively controlling it is a detail I feel some people would miss. This is also one of the few bosses that feel quite intimidating, as he really towers over you. So when he does his spin move, I'm not sure why, but I get a sense of nervousness for whatever reason. So it's pretty nice to see that Treasure did a good job at making these bosses feel actually intimidating. Lastly, my favorite in the whole game is against this boss who basically plays how you do, having her own grapple. She can pick stuff up and throw it just like you can, making you feel like you're fighting an evil version of yourself. I think it's a unique idea to use her own grapple to damage herself by pulling it. This even causes her to throw up after for whatever reason. Again, this boss is just perfect, and it really feels like the game's version of a Dark Link type boss. Now the bosses I hate, starting with this one that feels like it's from Mario Galaxy, having you to walk around a planet platform while it drops these robots that create electric fences to try to block you in and shock you. I hate this boss because half of the time it just spent trying to even find it. Most of my footage is literally just me walking around looking for it, and when you do find her, the boss itself does nothing besides flying around. But if I did have to give a pro here, some of the voice lines that this thing says are quite chilling. Then you have this boss who you can knock her eyes off, making her go blind, and then the fight goes from an actual boss fight to watching her just run around screaming she's blind. It's not a horrible fight, it's just really boring because if you know what you're doing, she will never really get a chance to attack you. The eyes and the other parts of her face are supposed to attack you while she runs around, but they will miss more often than not. The final one I want to mention is the scariest boss in the game. It's one of the few bosses you don't really see the whole fight, as she mostly runs around behind doors trying to break them down, or comes through the floor hatches trying to smash them. Basically, the whole time you're spent watching this boss try to break stuff open, as everything is nailed down and locked tight, trying to keep her from entering the stage. But the whole atmosphere for this fight is amazing, even if the boss fight sucks. From the shadow that will appear of a girl hanging, to these bloody masks on the walls that accommodate the decor, this really feels like a nightmare for sure. And worst of all, God forbid you fail and she makes it inside. And while I said before, I love how the fight is aesthetically, I just feel the fight functionally is awful. It's so hard to keep track of her throughout the fight. Sometimes she will bang on stuff and I'll see no movement from whatever she's banging on. There's also so many different spots she can be at, and the room being so big as it is can sometimes mean by you just not being on the part she's on will just result in one step closer of her getting inside. In my opinion, this is probably one of the hardest bosses in the game besides the final boss. And this is also technically the only boss who implies you actually get killed from basically not beating her. Seeing the fear in her eyes is something else, man. Here's some other bosses that I'm kind of mixed on. I don't really like or hate them, but I'm gonna go ahead and mention them anyways. There's this boss who's in the desert who just screams damn it anytime you attack her, but I love this design so much. Then you have the alien boss who has all these space cops helping you fight her while you have to help free them if they get stuck. Personally, I love seeing these other characters in the level as it adds more to the game's lore and makes me want to know more about said characters and who they are or what this world is that we're even in. Then we have this slime boss, and I like slime girls, but this is ridiculous. Also, this boss sucks and just sits here the whole time letting you attack. Well, after you cleared all the bosses, it's time for the final boss, and man, is this a final boss done right. She is quite challenging, being able to summon these spiky balls that circle the stage, and more often was the reason for me getting hit and dying, which is probably the only part about this boss fight that I don't like. But she'll also summon these statues that appear, with each having a different ability. Some will shoot missiles at you, while others will drop bombs trying to stop you. If you're not careful, having a whole room of these will easily end your run. With that as well, she has two hands to grab stuff, and getting hit by these is the last thing you want. And the room that you fight her in is so beautiful. It has this light texture on the floor that's always spinning, giving the illusion the floor is moving, and it's a really neat detail. You use all your skills and soon take down the final boss, and watching her explode is so satisfying. With the final boss taken down, you leave the door ready for your ending. And we're back in the room again, and nothing has changed. So I thought ringing this bell in the middle would end the game, but this actually brings up the model viewer, so while neat, isn't what I wanted. But the model viewer is kind of just here if you want to stretch the models that you've already seen in game or get a better look at them. So it's a little interesting mode that they added for sure. Well, this is when an issue a lot of older PS2 games have is brought up. You see, the way you actually beat the bosses is with the move the game never tells you unless you read the guide that came with the game. You see, what you're supposed to do is grab a boss and then press the control sticks down, and this will make a bunch of hands appear to grab the boss and hopefully pull the demon out controlling them. This also comes at the cost of using points to do this attack, so make sure you don't fail it. You can tell when you got the demon out by having this floating head circle around everything. Once you beat the boss after freeing the demon, a scene of your sister coming back as the demon can't control her will happen. You now have freed your sister. Now do this with every boss. I personally don't have the time to redo every fight, so I just looked at the ending online, and what do you get from beating the game, you may ask? Once you free everyone, a door opens as this peaceful music plays, and opening the door greets you to a cutscene of all your sisters and you walking. That's really it. There's not really any real closure to what happened or why anything happened, so don't expect to actually learn what was going on. You're just kind of left with watching them walk, and that's it. And I think no surprise to anyone, this game was panned at release, as the game looked more on par with the late PS1 title than the PS2, and the controls that can take some time to master seem to be an issue for a lot of the reviewers. So sadly, we never saw anything from the series after that, but maybe that's for the best. I think Stretch Panic feels just right being a game from the past, with it having that really early 2000 feel to everything. And I think with it being released now or a new game coming out, I don't think it would work too well. And I mean, we've seen other similar games to this doing the boss rush method of story with no straight roads, and tell me now, who still even talks about this game? And I love No Straight Roads, but I'm gonna be honest, this game is dead. So I will at least be able to look back fondly on Stretch Panic and be happy for what it was, and not what it could have been. And with that, I want to say thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one.